told my woman to pack a bag. We going on a trip. 20 minutes later, I'm ready. All I have is the backpack because I plan on spending most of my time naked. An hour later, she comes down the hallway and for a 2-day trip, she has 4 bags. Make it make sense. Here's how to calculate weight and balance on the airplane. Let go. Boom, what up though? The weight and balance calculation will probably be the most important calculation that you're going to do before every flight, particularly when you start real world flying after you get your pilot's license. Because you're going to be riding around with friends. They're going to have bags. You're going to be dropping people off, picking people up. They're going to have gear. You need to be on top of the weight and balance to make sure the aircraft is always properly weighted and balanced. Because if it's not, it can make it very difficult to do certain maneuvers, and it can make it flat out dangerous in other situations if you're improperly weighted and balanced. So you always want to be on top of your weight and balance when it comes to your aircraft. Just think about it along these lines. If you've ever been in the back of a weighted down pickup truck, let's say you had a pickup truck and you were sitting in the back of that pickup truck, you and a bunch of friends, and there were a lot of material in the back of that truck, maybe some construction material, dirt, whatever it may have been, and it was weighting down the truck so much so the truck wasn't even straight and level like this, like a standard pickup truck. It was tilted to the back. It had so much stuff in it, and all that weight was just weighted down. Just think about the person who was driving that truck, how difficult their job was just to drive that truck simply because it was weighted improperly like this. It's the slightest little thing, like if they were just to try to turn, if they were to try to pick up speed and go faster, everything was difficult. They had to drive really slow. They had to do everything with caution until that truck became more properly weighted and you got rid of that big load. That's an example of how having improper weight and balance can impact an aircraft. Now that's something, a pickup truck on the ground. Just think about being improperly weighted in the air and how dangerous that can be. You always want to be on top of that weight and balance. Let go. Boom! To figure out the weight and balance of your aircraft, you're going to need a few standby materials. But these materials are things that you're going to have on hand because they're going to be located in either 1 or 2 places. 1, your POH. That's going to be, of course, your standard Bible for pretty much everything you do in aviation. So you have your pilot's operating handbook for the aircraft that you have. If you go to the weight and balance section, it's usually section 6 inside of that POH. It's going to give you a bunch of different charts and graphs. You're going to use those charts and graphs. You're going to have like some loading arrangements, a loading graph, a center of gravity moment. All 3 of those kinds of charts, you want to have those on standby and have those at hand. You additionally want to have the weight and balance of your aircraft, the current most up-to-date weight and balance of your aircraft. Think about when you do your pre-flight. Part of your pre-flight and part of the standard things that you're checking the acronym ARROW, making sure that you have all the proper documentation on board. If you want a review of the documents that are required to be on the aircraft at all times, there will be a link at the end of this video reviewing those documents. But one of those documents is the weight and balance. And you want to make sure you have the most up-to-date weight and balance. So every time you do your pre-flight, you should be checking this piece of documentation and know exactly what the weight and balance is of your aircraft. Because every time the aircraft is updated, it needs a new weight and balance. If it gets painted, spray painted candy red, it needs a new weight and balance. If avionics may be changed out and things are heavier than it was or lighter than it was before, there's new seats, whatever it may be, it needs a new weight and balance. So you want to make sure you're operating off the most up-to-date and current weight and balance. If you're a student at the student pilot level, the aircraft that you fly, an easy way to kind of remember this so you can start playing around with weight and balance calculations is the next time you do your pre-flight, take out your phone and take a picture of the weight and balance that's stored inside the aircraft, because that weight and balance stays inside the aircraft, so you don't want to take that with you. It should always be in there, but you want to at least take a picture of it so that way you have the exact weight and balance of the aircraft with you, and then when you get to the crib you can start playing around with different weight and balance calculations to make sure you're always on top of your game. Hey, boom, turn off the lights and light a candle. We back off in that thing with the weight and balance calculation. The simple formula that you're going to use to calculate weight and balance is weight times arm equals moment. That's weight times arm equals moment. What do those terms actually mean though? So let's get into that a little bit. Weight, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's the heaviness of something. So we're going to be calculating the heaviness of the passengers, the weight of the bags, the weight of the fuel that's on board the aircraft. Easy, nice to remember. But what exactly is an arm? If you ever heard the expression, be an arm's distance away from the next person. Like, hey, everybody stand in line next to each other, extend your arms out, and I want everybody to be an arm's length distance away from someone else. That's how you can kind of remember what arm signifies and what it means. It's the distance from something. But the distance from what? It's the distance from the datum line. The datum line is just an imaginary line on your aircraft. It's usually on the smaller aircrafts, right down the center here, right in the front of the aircraft behind the firewall. Everything to the forward of that datum line is going to be considered a negative value, and everything behind it is going to be considered a positive value. So think about that datum line, that imaginary kind of line, and the distance from there. And the reason why you want to know the distance, particularly, for example, let's just take this front seat passenger sitting right there chilling. How far are they from the datum line? That would be your arm, the distance they are from the datum line. How far is this baggage compartment from the datum line? That would be the arm when you get ready to calculate the arm for the baggage. So arm is about the arm's distance. That's how you remember that from the imaginary datum line on your aircraft. Boom! So now let's talk about what exactly is moment. Hey, to really understand moment, think about playing on a seesaw when you were a kid. And you had a seesaw and you were playing on that seesaw, and let's just say it was two different sized people. You had a bigger person on that seesaw, and then of course a smaller person on the seesaw. You already knew what was going to happen. It was going to lean to the bigger person's side, and the smaller person was going to be in the air. But if you wanted to correct that, if you wanted to tell your friend, let's say, how can we correct this to make it level? What were your options? What could you do? You can move the bigger person a little bit more forward, or you can take the pivot point at the bottom of the seesaw, if it was adjustable, and kind of move it around, and that can help balance it as well. Those were your only options to keep a seesaw from tilting to one side, to kind of get it to be level. So you're following that same kind of concept to discover that moment for your aircraft. Boom! So on your aircraft, just like that seesaw, the pivot point that's at the bottom that you're trying to balance is known as the envelope. It's a small little section that you're trying to make sure everything is balanced and everything is right within that center of gravity, because you don't want it to be too nose heavy and you don't want it to be too tail heavy. So think about what you're doing. If that airplane was magically suspended in the air, it was perfectly balanced and it wouldn't lean one way or the other like that seesaw. You want a perfectly balanced seesaw so you and your friends can have fun playing on that thing. Boom! Now that you understand the definitions of the terms weight, arm, and moment, and you know the equation that we're looking for, weight times arm equals moment. Everything else is going to be a breeze from here on out. And the unique thing about this equation, even if you didn't have the arm, all you had was the weight and the moment, like some documentation may give you, you can still figure out the arm. It's just a 3-point equation. So it'll be just like you're solving for X in any kind of basic math equation. You would just take the moment, divide it by the weight, and it will give you the arm. So you don't necessarily need all three if they're not available in any kind of documentation or chart that you're looking for. You can easily factor it in and figure it out just by dividing the moment by the weight, and it'll give you the arm. But this is the equation that you want to be familiar with. Weight times arm equals moment. Boom! So check it. Let's run that thing. You got your POH open, section 6, the weight and balance section. You're looking at your graphs and charts. You got your loading graph right there. You got your center of gravity, moment, envelope. You also got your loading arrangement so you can get the arms if you need that calculation for your charts and graphs. You're all set there. Boom! You also have a picture of the weight and balance, the current, most up-to-date of the aircraft that you're flying in. So all we're going to do is use a lot of this information to run some calculation and run some numbers for a few items. The items we're looking for: basic empty weight, front passengers, rear passengers, fuel, and baggage. Those are the main things that we're going to be factoring for. So that basic empty weight, that's the weight of the aircraft that you took the picture of. That's part of that AERO acronym that's always located or part of the documentation inside the aircraft at all times. You want to make sure you use that basic empty weight. What's that's telling you? The weight of this aircraft without passengers, without you in it, without baggage, and also too, without usable fuel. The unusable fuel is still maybe part of that basic empty calculation, in addition to the oil and a lot of other things. You can read your POH to make sure all that has been factored into that basic empty weight. So let's just say you're looking at that card, you're looking at that basic empty weight, and it's telling you you got a basic empty weight of 1136 and a moment of 34. Boom! You just writing those numbers down, creating your columns, move on to the next one. Front seat passengers. Hey, It's me and my girl. We riding, we sliding, we slipping and dipping up in that thing, baby. Let's just say I'm 185, solid, shredded in that thing. You know what I'm talking about? And she 110, little petite thing. Boom, together, we 295. Our moment, 11. So you write that down. Add up the weight of the passengers, find the moment. Where are you finding this moment from on these different types of items? You're looking at those loading graphs and charts. They're going to look very similar to something like this. It's top graph right here. A nice loading graph inside of your POH. You're going to see something that looks just like this. Going to have lines and graph, and it's going to have a code, and it's going to tell you, oh, this is the code for the passenger. Follow this line, pick what weight they are. We were at 295, go across, and then it's going to, once you go across, it's going to tell you exactly what that moment is. Simple. All you're doing is following line charts and graphs for the designated passengers that you need on front seat, whether it's front or rear, and following that and plugging those numbers in. Nice and smooth. Rear passengers on this trip here, hey, we dipping solo, baby. It's just her and I dipping, swinging, and banging that thing. So it's 0 there for us. But if you had rear seat passengers, boom, you want to plug that in. Boom! Here's a nice little tip to be aware of when it comes to rear seat passengers or anything like that. Let's just say you were on a solo trip or it's just you and one other person, and you guys have some bags with you, right? But you also know that for a fact, you're probably not going to put those bags in the baggage compartment. You're just going to toss them on the back seat. Then you want to make sure you make that calculation for the rear seat. So that way you're using the appropriate arm and the appropriate weight for the rear seat and not for the baggage. Because the baggage area is for bags that actually go in the baggage compartment. But just like when we're in our car, sometimes you don't put things in the trunk, you just toss it in the back seat. So you just want to make sure you're using the appropriate calculations there so you always have the most accurate weight and balance for your aircraft. This scenario here, 0 bags, of course, in the rear. Let's move on to fuel. Fuel, the avgas that you're going to be using for your aircraft, weighs 6 pounds per gallon. That's what you need to remember. 6 pounds per gallon. And this is all about a weight calculation. So you want to calculate the fuel. Let's just say we need 15 gallons of fuel for this trip. Slipping and dipping, swinging and banging that thing. So 15 times 6, the 6 that it weighs, is going to give us 90 on the weight. So we'll plug that in. Boom, 90. And then we'll find, again, go back to that chart again on your loading graph. It's telling you everything that you need to know. You're not pulling these numbers out the sky. They're already laid out for you on your POH. You're just going back to that same loading graph, looking at that code, finding the fuel line. You know how much it weighs, 90, going across, and it's going to tell you the moment right at the bottom. Boom. Plug that number in on your moment. Our moment there is nice and 4. So you got that number plugged in. Baggage, you do the same exact thing. You know how much those bags weigh. Weigh those bags. Just like the airlines weigh those bags, now you're understanding why airlines weigh bags, why they charge people for bags, and all kinds of things like this. So weigh those bags. You know exactly what they are. 30 pounds full of them bags. Do the same thing with your line graph. Get the moment of that. Now you pretty much have all of your numbers and everything that you need. And remember, you only have the weight and the moment that you're getting off the line graph. But if you wanted to fill in the arm, it would be easy to do so. All you would do is divide moment divided by weight and then plug in your arm if needed. It may not be needed for your charts. So look at your charts, because on your final chart, you may only need the weight and the moment. It's going to vary from aircraft to aircraft, looking in your POH and following the graphs and going along. So when you get to that point, if you need that, it's easy to factor that in if you need that arm weight. So you get it, got everything set there. Everything's beautiful. Add that thing up. You add it up total, 1551 total in terms of your weight. And then your moment, of course, is 52. If you needed the arm, just back it in. 52 to the 1551, and it can give you your arm that you need. Everything is beautiful. So now what you're going to do with those numbers? You got the total. You know what the total weight is. You know what the total moment is. Boom! Boom! So you just simply plug those numbers in to the graph that's in your POH. It's going to be the center of gravity moment graph that's right next in that same weight and balance section. And all you're looking for on that graph, what was the weight? 1551. Go up on that chart, 1551. And then it was a 52 moment at the bottom scale. So go across until you get to 52, and boom. We're right in the middle of that thing. You're going to have something that looks like a wing. And that wing is, think about it, that's the envelope. You want to be right in the middle of that thing as much as possible, because that's going to give you the perfect center of gravity that you're looking for to be nice and balanced, just like you are on that seesaw. You don't want it to be too more of a forward nose, and you don't want it, of course, to be aft or too much tail heavy either. You want it to be nice in the center. That means that you can do all the fun maneuvers. You can take her up. You're doing all kinds of beautiful things, and hey, having fun, and you don't have to worry about any weight or balance issues. Hey, boom! A fun, easy way to help you learn weight and balance calculations very quickly is, before you take every practice flight, do a weight and balancing calculation. You and your instructor, and maybe a couple flight bags. And then the next time, maybe do you, your instructor, and 2 heavy bags. Maybe act like a third person's in the aircraft, and start playing around with these different weight and balance calculations. That way you're checking and verifying each time you're having a moment, and each time you're having a practice session with your instructor. If you do this, let's just say you have 60 flights before your check ride. You did this 60 times. When it comes time to calculate a weight and balance on check ride day, you're going to be flowing with that thing. So that's a nice, easy way to do it. You have to fly anyway. Why not just run a quick weight and balance calculation so it stays fresh on top of your mind? The reason why this is very important, because when you start doing real world flying and you start picking people up, dropping people off, picking up baggage, one person may have scuba gear, all kinds of stuff like that, it can get very complex. And remember, this is just your takeoff weight. So this is your takeoff weight in the air that you were calculating. Let's just say you've been in the air for an hour or so and you're getting ready to land. Recalibrate, because remember, you've been burning fuel. So the fuel that you took off with, you're not going to have that fuel when you land. So you have to factor that in and get what is your landing weight, and make sure you're still within that envelope. Everything is still cool and everything is good and weight and balance with the aircraft. So it can be a constant thing. If you're making multiple stops along the way, picking up, dropping off, baggages on, baggages off, you can see how complex it can get. But it starts with the basics, which we just reviewed. If you understand those basics, you can apply those basics to every scenario. Hey, don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. I am Donovan Batiste. Hey, this is Leadership Mindset, a place where you can come for free, fun videos about everything that you need to know for you to become a pilot. Because I want you to feel what pilots all over the world feel when we swinging and banging that thing. Hey, subscribe to this channel. Love you one time. Hey.